You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, and this is News with the Eyes of Faith, where I talk about news from the perspective of Christ and the doctrine of Christ. Item number one in the news: Biden is still president. I use the term confusocracy. Harris isn't president, she's still vice president. Biden's not running because of his mental acuity issues, but it's such where he can still remain as president. That doesn't make any sense, the confusocracy. Well, speaking of elderly men, happy birthday to Russell M. Nelson. For anyone reaching 100, that's something to congratulate. There's word of wisdom issues, of course. There's genetic issues, of course. Whatever it is, happy birthday. Sorry for that technical error. Also in that news, the secret lives of a Mormon woman. We're still having issues of using the correct name of the church. And these type of things, if you just ignore them, they go away. Now we're adding, also in the news, we're adding more hymns to the hymn book, this incremental creation, and they've added the hymn Amazing Grace. Now, I sustain the prophets. I'm a bit curious and maybe even a bit puzzled by this push towards Protestantism you see in the church. Elder Gary Stevens in General Conference a year ago said this, talking about Easter, and then he started talking about Palm Sunday and Good Friday, and which something Joseph Smith never talked about. So this is, Elder Stevens said, this includes a greater and more thoughtful recognition of Palm Sunday and Good Friday as practiced by some of our Christian cousins. So never before in the history of the church, and you can double check me by reading conference reports. Now, I've read every single conference report, every single talk given in conference dispensation that's been recorded. No prophets ever talked about this. It's not talked about in the scriptures that we need to celebrate these days. Joseph Smith never did, and no one up to that point ever thought that this was something important. So you have a man who holds priesthood keys telling us to turn to apostate faiths who don't hold priesthood keys to look to them for directions in worship. Now, they have this article that talks about in the Church News and Deseret News, and Elder Matthew Carpenter, who is the General Authority Advisor, 70, said this: Amazing Grace is not an anomaly. As more releases become available, we will see that we are sharing hymns with other Christian faiths. It's a joy because we are all Christians worshiping Jesus Christ. All Christians worshiping Jesus Christ. Even though the Book of Mormon teaches that there's only two churches. Now, President Hinckley said this, April 2002. As a church, we have critics, many of them. They say we do not believe in the traditional Christ of Christianity. There's some substance to what they say. Our faith, our knowledge, is not based on ancient tradition, the creeds of which came of a finite understanding and out of an almost infinite discussion of men trying to arrive at a definition of the risen Christ. Our faith or knowledge comes from the witness of a prophet in this dispensation. Now you notice that in the temple recommends you no longer ask if this is the church, the only true church. Now we talk about the prophet as the only person holding keys, but you ever have a prophet without an organized religion? And so all churches are the same except we have keys, and so it feels like we're not being quite transparent with what we're saying. That we're saying something to accommodate people who don't like exclusivity claims. Are we just another denomination? And isn't that the position the Community of Christ took decades ago, and look what happened to them? And if we take that same position and persist in it, and who are we going to sell the Kirtland Temple to when we run out of money? So at the first vision, now this is, we're talking about worshiping Jesus Christ, as Elder Carpenter said. So what did Jesus Christ say? Well, all churches were wrong. Their creeds were an abomination. Their professors were corrupt. And in the Wentworth letter, Joseph Smith was told to go not after them. Like the correct name of the church, you can always cite bad precedents and dead prophets to back up your position. So this is what I suggest. Read 2 Nephi 28, which we'll read the first vision, Pearl of Great Price, and then in the Wentworth letter. Read 2 Nephi 28, where Nephi talks about these different religions. Read section 21, where it talks about the modes of worship, people worshiping their own God, and where it makes a statement there's only one true and living church. As always, I'm open to correction and clarification on this. Open to correction and clarification. But I'd like to read something that this is the source of this is from Elder McConkie, his biography written by his son Joseph Fielding McConkie, and this is a little bit long, and I have to look at the screen, so the sound may dip out a bit. But let's go. In the spring of 1984, Elder Bruce R. McConkie was invited to speak at a group of faculty members at BYU who would be teaching the Book of Mormon in the fall. The first thing Elder McConkie did was reach into his briefcase and bring out a computer printout. I have something here which, when I first saw it, about bowled me over, he began. He had our attention. I have here the results of a testimony survey that was conducted by the Missionary Training Center in Provo. Elders, sisters, and older couples were surveyed as to the depth of their testimony regarding certain doctrinal matters. And they're asked questions like, God is my Father of my spirit, Jesus Christ is the Son of God, Joseph Smith is a prophet of God, the Book of Mormon is the Word of God, Spencer W. Kimball is a prophet of God today. And the responded 4 ways. I know this, I believe this, I do not know whether this is true, I doubt whether this is true. In a very sober tone, Elder McConkie asked, would you be interested in knowing which of these areas was the lowest in testimony? Everyone nodded. He said the lowest areas of testimony across elders, sisters, and couples were these. Joseph Smith is a prophet of God, the Book of Mormon is the Word of God. The effect upon the whole group was visible, as though someone had hit us in the stomach with a baseball bat. We were stunned. Shocked, for these matters were fundamental to what missionaries would soon be proclaiming. Elder McConkie raised his voice and said, something's wrong. Something's terribly wrong. Maybe it's something I've done wrong. Maybe it's something the brethren have done wrong. Perhaps it's something we've done wrong here at BYU in our church educational system, but clearly, something's wrong. Think about where's this going? Where you want to change the church in order to make it easier to interact with Protestants, changing our modes of worship to get along with them, selling out Joseph Smith and the Restoration for 30 pieces of interfaith dialogue. So, open for clarification, I will embrace clarification and correction. The news is reporting that young women are becoming more liberal. This is not the Young Woman organization, but indirectly, young women in the church will embrace this general trend. But this is just young women in general in the country, and it's from The Hill is reporting this. So what does this mean for young men? So you marry, as a return missionary, you get off your mission, and you marry a young woman who's really kind of soft and embracing of abortion. A young woman who feels comfortable in getting married in the temple and talking about sealing power and Elijah turning the hearts of the fathers to the children, then getting an abortion behind her husband back. And you're seeing something J.R. Tolkien talked about in his book, The Lord of the Rings, the Ent Wives. Now, the Ents, those are the talking trees that were in the Return of the middle movie, The Two Towers. Now, there's no female trees in there. They're all male. And there's a reason why. Is what happens is that the male Ents kind of got doing their one thing. The female Ents started going, and they eventually separated, and they lost track of each other because they both went 2 directions, and maybe that's what's happening right now. Of course, the answer is that Lucifer is the common enemy, and we turn to Christ and make sure it's not sort of this general Christ, but it's the one revealed through Joseph Smith. So this is a big item, was the Trump-Harris debate. Now, I admit Trump was not at his best, and the low point, this is kind of interesting talking with the cats, however, that's become a sort of a meme factory with Trump with the cats and the pets. He was better when he debated Biden, when he dialed it back, and it worked a lot better. And he started out good, and he just couldn't dial it back. I think his best one-liner was he's going to send Kamala Harris a MAGA hat because, again, this confusocracy where she was adopting Trump's positions and claiming them as her own to confuse voters. Is also reframing partial birth abortion as execution. Look up DNX. Always keep in mind flattering words and fair promises, as the Book of Mormon talks about. Harris did a better performance, but theatrics just don't make you a good leader. Was that the accusation he had about Ronald Reagan? He was just an actor reading lines. Back to the Future, Sting song, Russians. There are 3 issues that Harris clearly misrepresented Trump's position. Confusocracy. Project 2025, well, that's a good bad position. That's separate of whether that's Trump's position, and Trump has distanced himself, but she kept acting like it was his position, and it wasn't. Abortion, he stated that he allowed exceptions for rape and incest, and then Harris talked about the 20 states where those weren't allowed, and claiming it was Trump's position. Confusocracy, that was a bait and switch. She was clearly misrepresenting him. And she embraced the Charlottesville Fine People hoax. That was debunked by Snopes, but apparently she's not aware of it, or she knew about it and she just didn't care. And that's a problem when you have a presidential candidate misrepresenting things, not being honest with you, flattering words and fair promises. Harris's campaign is built on a hoax and misrepresentation, and she's hip deep in the skulls of aborted fetuses. Now, if I asked Trump, I would have. This is what I've done. I armchair quarterbacking. I know. Harris didn't win because you don't win if you misrepresent things. You get disqualified. They do that in the Olympics. I would have adopted some Sun Tzu tactics. First of all, shift the train. I would shifted, instead of debating Harris, I would have talked to the moderators saying, hey, there's a double standard here. You made a promise to the people. Make sure you made not to me, but a promise to the people that you would be honest and you'd call people on misrepresentations. You did this with me, but you're not doing this with Harris. That's a double standard, and you're betraying your promise to the American people. Do you intend to keep betraying your promise to the American people, this breach of contract, as it were? And if they kept it up, I just would have said, okay, I made an agreement. You're not keeping your agreement, so I'm walking out of this negotiation. Left and just go on Truth Social and just start talking. Talk about, and this is a tactic Reagan used at Reykjavik, that they're abusing the relationship. They weren't keeping their promises. Betrayal of their covenant to the American people. Always frame it as a betrayal of the people. Now, they're going to say that you're a coward because you walked off the debate, but certainly Trump would have the energy because he's taking control of the situation. Now, this is news with the eye of faith, so let's look at this through the lens of the Book of Mormon. The first mind hack I want you to think about is, who doesn't want you to believe in a conspiracy theory? Who benefits if people think that secret combinations are just a conspiracy theory? Okay, I hope you can feel it. Now, the Book of Mormon provides insights. The Book of Mormon talks about lawyers and their, quote, devices or tactics and logical traps. As I was listening to the debate, I kept thinking about Zeezrom and Amulek, and that's in Alma chapter 11, how Zeezrom would misstate Amulek's position and implant false memories. And Kamala Harris was doing the same thing. You can also brush up on Korihor and Alma chapter 30. Harris, who was a lawyer, was using the tactics that Zeezrom used. And you go back there, you study, and you pay attention how she misrepresented Trump's position in order to win an election, and she knew about Biden's mental acuity problems and kept quiet about it to her own benefit. That'll give you pause. So that's news with the eye of faith. This is a little bit longer, just because I think there's these very grave issues. Like I said, I'm always open to correction and clarification. I will offer retraction. And that's my promise to you. So here's your life hack: embracing adulthood. To everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. That's from Ecclesiastes. A time to be born, a time to die, and there's also a time to be a child and a time to be an adult. Embrace adulthood. Paul said, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. So right now, this is my life. I opened a stock portfolio this year, and Motley Fool recommends that you buy about 25 stocks and leave them in there for 5 years. And you don't mess with penny stocks. You just do common sense stocks, companies that have been around for a while. Now, this is September, so the end of the fiscal year. That's Michaelmas. I'm getting dividends from this stock. Money's just rolling in. Now, it's in pennies, but it's just not. I am getting money, so I'm tracking that for tithing. Now, what happened is I also got one of the stocks I invested in, Big Lots, filed for bankruptcy. So it went from $1.10 to it's at 9 cents. Well, I just paid a couple of pennies to get a lot of experience. The experience was worth it. I got a cash call from SiriusXM because they went through a reorganization, and so they wanted $38 to cover the reorganization, and so it ate up all my dividends. But But once again, I'm getting experience. I'm learning some things right now. I'm also involved in 3 class action lawsuits for the FCC right now. These are the complexities of being adult, and beware of the seductive voices of infantilization. Adulthood is not something to be feared, but embraced. Lehi told his son to arise from the dust and be men, 2 Nephi 1:21. So embrace adulthood, and that's the life lesson, the life hack to you. And that is news with the eyes of faith. Thank you.